Okay, in this short presentation, I just want to explain a little bit more about scientific publishing process and consider the different types of science literature that you're likely to encounter. And one of the assigned readings will help you think about just sort of how much credibility you should give to any particular reading. You must be well aware that there's a wide range of difficulties and audiences for particular scientific writing. And you can use different literature for different purposes in learning about your own topic. But ultimately, the goal of this course is to have you reading some detailed primary scientific literature and to take the evidence from that primary literature and develop it into your paper and ultimately in 498 your argument. And so you must be able to recognize what is a good scientific paper, and so that you can evaluate the credibility of various pieces of information for your own writing. Now, obviously, there's a wide range, everything from, if you were looking up a topic like, let's say, lead contamination of forests in a particular area, you might well find that there are local newspaper articles written about that particular area in a local paper. Those be everything then through perhaps reviews in more general scientific journals, and right to specialized concentrated primary literature in specialized journals, like, for example, the Journal of Ecology or Journal of Toxicology. If you're first starting out and you just want to get a general approach about the particular topic, reading in a good general article may be very helpful. However, as I said, ultimately you're going to have to be able to recognize the data in a primary journal article. So you're going to get a lot of information about running a search from the librarian, and I'm not going to be talking about the search process, but what I am going to talk about is what you're looking at when you get those primary research papers from your search. So I want to first help you consider about journals, because you will get a listing of articles that are in journals, and you probably do not have a great deal of experience in actually considering whether or not you have a good journal or one that is not so good. And in fact, it may even surprise you that there are a lot of not so good scientific journals out there. There is a huge range, just like there's a huge range in the quality of anything that is established in our society. Huge range of quality of journals, everything from extensively peer-reviewed, highly reputable journals through to what we call Xerox journals, where you just submit the article and they publish it, and nobody is paying any attention to the quality of the information that's been submitted to them. And so one has to be a little careful, because an article might look to be completely genuine and quite authoritative, and actually it's not at all. It's just been basically published from what the authors sent to the journal, and nobody has taken much notice of it. So as a quick way of finding out if there's the article in the journal is worth considering, one of the things you can look at is to go and look at the actual journal itself. And I picked the Journal of Cell Biology, but being a cell biologist and knowing that this is a good journal, but whatever comes up in your search, you could have a quick look and see Journal of Cell Biology. It's going to have, of course, have a website. Over here, the box, it's telling you it is a peer-reviewed journal. Good to know. International journal, and then it tells you a few more details. Gives you an impact factor. I'm going to talk more about impact factor in a minute. But here we have the journal. So it tells you approximately the kinds of things that it's going to be talking about. It also has instructions for authors. And if it hadn't told you that right up front that it was a peer-reviewed journal, you could have looked at the instructions for authors and see what they are told. And if there's going to be a peer review process, it will tell you in there. A lot of the instructions for authors are all about things like formatting and how many words you can use, that kind of thing. But in there, there'll be instructions about how it's going to be processed by the journal. It's just a brief overview that in case you are not really aware of what happens when you submit a paper. But you've done your work, lab work, field work, whatever, written up the article in the format required by the instructions for this particular journal. You then send in your article to one of the editors of the journal, who will look at it and initially say, no, this topic is something that we might publish if it's a good paper, or not. If they say not, they will send it directly back to you. They will not review it. They will just say, we do not consider this topic as something that we would publish in our journal, suggest you send it somewhere else. If they do accept it, that editor that you first sent it to will send out your paper to 2 or 3 external reviewers, and those people will be given a certain amount of time to read your article, decide whether they think it conforms to the practices in that field, if the data and experiments look like they've been conducted correctly, if the data analysis appears to be done correctly, if all of the data is discussed in an appropriate way, and they will give feedback. Remember, and this will come up in one of the assigned readings, remember, they are not repeating the work. They are simply reading it and, to the best of their ability, deciding whether or not, from what they read, you have conducted these experiments in a correct way, using the right methods, analyze them correctly, and does what you've done and determined from this kind of fit with the bigger picture of the understanding in this particular field. If it all fits and it's sort of as expected and there's no earth-shaking, changing things, they probably won't question methods. If you are proposing something really dramatic, then they may ask for more experiments or more backup before they'll allow it to go through. So the reviewers will then send their opinions back to the reviewer. If the reviewer thinks you've done a good job, then the editor will come back to you. There's always some minor corrections and fiddly things, and add an extra paragraph or that kind of thing, but it will get accepted for publication. If there are quite a few questions and the reviewers think that there is missing information, there may be a sort of accepted with revisions designation, and that means that you have to go and do a certain amount of work and resubmit with the issues that the reviewers have raised corrected. If they really have problems with the article, they can just plain reject it. And if an article is rejected, then you have to go somewhere else or do a really dramatic revision and get new reviewers before you can it'll ever get published. So this is a lengthy process, and it can take anywhere from, let's say, 6 weeks, absolute minimum, very rare occurrence, up to a couple of years to get things published. And that will depend a lot on the journal, on the area of study, and just on a particular paper in general. The very rapid publications are usually in journals like Cell or Science, or and it will be an article that people think is of extreme interest. For example, something on COVID immunity right now would probably get published in 6 weeks. Dramatic new drugs for cancer get published in 6 weeks. A study about lead in Montana in the forest wouldn't, because they would not see it as having the same degree of urgency, and it wouldn't get fast tracked. But so generally, I'd say an average probably about 9 months of waiting before you know whether your paper is going to be published. So it's a fairly long time. Okay, so I've said that journals have a dramatically different impact and have dramatically different degrees of respect from the community. So they calculate this thing called an impact factor. And the journal impact factor tells you how many times articles in that journal are cited, referenced by other articles in either the same or other journals. So if you publish an article in Journal of Cell Biology, on average, in about 3 years' time, it will have been published, it will have been cited, referenced in 10 other articles. This just means that enough people working in a similar area are reading the paper and are acknowledging it and find it interesting enough, relevant enough to actually reference in their own paper. The way that you can find scientific impact factors, if you aren't just directly looking up a journal name, is in this site called SciMago JR. So SciMago JR. And this just shows basically all journal ranking. And so it can tell you fairly quickly whether or not your journal is not so much interesting, but highly respected. So you can go here, and this, what you find when you get journal ranks, is the most of all journals ranked to the top. And this Cancer Journal for clinicians, I mean, this is just in large number of treatments listed, and so they all sort of cite one another. This kind of journal ranking is extremely unusual. You drop very rapidly down into the teens and then 20s, and you'll notice that most of the journals up in this region are review journals. So these are articles that summarize a lot of other work, and therefore it's easy to cite them because they have a lot of wide range of information in them. When you get down to primary papers, which are basically focusing on a much narrower topic, they tend to be cited less. But still, there's that. So let's not use these very general ones, but let's go to a more specialized one. And let's, for example, say we were interested in nursing. You're wanting to do your paper on something in nursing. So under the topics, you might look under health professions and subject areas. I actually didn't see anything specifically under nursing in here, so I just went to health professions miscellaneous and looking at the rankings here, and in the miscellaneous ones, so we've got Journal of Learning Disabilities as the most highly cited journal, and here was only impact factor of 1.63. So on average, these articles are only being cited 1.5 times. So very, very different to the very high level of citation that you saw in the clinical or review articles. And quite rapidly, it drops below 1. So that means that there are a whole bunch of papers being published out there that are never cited again. Never mind, and this includes self-citing, so they're never even cited by the person who wrote them. And now see, you're down here with rapidly going down to these Australian Journal of Emergency Management, 0.2. This is getting really low, 0.15. National Journal of Practice-Based Learning in Health and Social Care. Okay, so just my point again, these high variability. I thought we also could look at environmental science. And for example, let's think if we were looking at that, the idea of lead in the forest, maybe we'd look at ecology. And here we see some journals that are being cited at quite a reasonable amount. Environmental change, sustainability, they've got a reasonably high citation rate. Now you're probably saying, oh, MG, she doesn't seriously want us to look up all the journals that we use, that all of the articles we're using are in. Correct, I do not want you to do that. What I do want you to do is start to become aware of the journals that are well respected, and you should see them regularly. The Journal of Organic Chemistry, the Science and Nature are two really biggies. So try to start to recognize in your particular field, and when we're talking in your appointments about the literature search, I can help you. I try to identify the most highly cited ones that I know of. And the other time that you might need this is, for example, if you have a particular article that you find very compelling, very central to everything it is that you're discussing, but you only have one article about that particular topic or making that particular point, it might be a really good idea to have a look and see how well respected that journal is. I have had in the past one topic, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but a couple of students have used it, where there is one paper from a group in New Zealand claiming a particular point that the students really wanted to use in their paper, and you may use it. However, you need to be aware that there is no other, and this is about a 10-year-old paper, so there was no further supporting evidence, and I would give that less credibility than a topic that had been investigated 10 years ago and had been built on since, suggesting that other people also found that interesting and found it valid. So it's something I will push you on a little bit, ask you to make sure that you really feel that the ground that you're building your paper on is solid and not just something that a group submitted to a Xerox journal a long time ago, completely forgot about, and you're picking it up because you're searching for that particular topic, but it's really not a well-founded research topic. Okay, so just think about that as you're working on your paper. It may not be relevant to all of you, but some of you may find that it's an important thing to think about. So.